Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Debbie Lee and I'm here with the White Samurai Investment Group today, and we are diving into a topic that separates people who play with money from people who grow money consistently. So what are they? The systems and strategy. So this video today is part 2 of systems and strategies. So we are going to be looking at turning the data into decisions. And within this topic, we will be breaking down the 3 powerful ideas. The first one, the quiet advantage of the data-driven investor. From confused to confident, building a system that grows while you sleep. And the discipline trap, why motivation won't make you rich. So over this past year, since that I've been working with White Samurai, I have seen a repetitive pattern. Most everyday people aren't failing because they're bad with money, but more because they've never been shown how wealthy actually make financial decisions. So most people are taught, save whatever you have left and then invest whenever you feel like you have enough money. But it might also look like spend based on how you feel. Like if you're really happy, treat yourself. If you're really sad, treat yourself. Track nothing. Hope for better days and just like relying on motivation to keep consistent. But what do the wealthy do? They follow the systems that are built on data, structure, and repeatability. What shocked me in this past year is how quiet these systems are. They're not glamorous. They're not something you see on Instagram. They're not motivational speeches or wake up at 5 a.m. routines. That's ridiculous. I know I do not do that. They're boring. Everything's predictable. They're all the same. But that's exactly why they work, because they're consistent. I've spoken to people who were making great money, but living in absolute chaos, spending just randomly, saving so sparingly and impulsively, and then investing when the vibe felt right, and then only checking their accounts when something felt off or wrong. They weren't lacking ambition, they were lacking structure. So on the other hand, I met people earning very modest incomes, just very quite modest, who were quietly building wealth, generating consistent long-term wealth. But it wasn't through luck, it wasn't like a miracle stock that they got, and it wasn't like anything that they had to sacrifice extremely. It was just a simple system that they repeated week after week, and all the patterns emerged. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Wealthy people don't rely on motivation. They rely on the mechanics, because motivation is emotional and emotion is unpredictable, and unpredictable habits lead to unpredictable results. Wealth is built on predictability, but here is the truth, right? No one taught us any of this. No one teaches us that this is what it is. Not in school, not at home, and definitely not in most workplaces either. People are managing money based on memory and what they are grown up with. Gut feelings and like emotional energy and like the vibes. So what we're going to be breaking down today is how the wealthy people use data to stay disciplined, how they build systems to grow money while they sleep, and why the motivation trap keeps most people stuck. And more importantly, how you can use these principles even if you're starting from scratch, from ground zero. Even if you have felt like you've struggled in the past, or if you're not a numbers person, because I wasn't. By the end of this video, hopefully you will understand the foundation of your future wealth. Not any hustling, no luck, not motivation. Well, hopefully a little bit of motivation, but just the systems. So let's dive into a story first before we get into the strategies and systems. So I will tell you a story about two people that I met earlier this year. So for secrecy's sake, I will just call them Marcus and Elena. So Marcus and Elena were two people, and they both had very similar incomes, very similar bills, very similar lifestyles, very similar dreams of financial freedom, but two very different outcomes. So what makes their story very powerful is that you will probably see parts of yourself in like maybe one of them or maybe both of them. So Marcus was very motivated but a chaotic investor. He was charismatic, energetic, like a classic go-getter. And when he felt motivated, he could move mountains. But when the motivation faded, which it always does, everything collapsed. So the first time I spoke to Marcus, he was like, Debbie, I just need to be more disciplined. Like, I know what I'm doing, but I just can't stay consistent. Marcus, you're in the right place. So this is something that I hear every single week, every single day. Most people don't have a money problem, they just have a system problem. Marcus earned a decent salary and literally, like, on paper, he should have been saving and investing easily. But when we dug really into all of his accounts, this is what we found. So we found no expense tracking. Savings only happened when he felt ready, and investments were made very emotionally, very willy-nilly. Spending was extremely reactive. There were no categories, there was no structure, there was no system. And there was a lot of guilt-driven behaviour and a lot of, I'll wait till Monday and then I'll fix everything for the week ahead. And then I don't know, the motivation would hit and then he'll just go all in. There was a new budget, there was a new notebook, he found a new app, there was a new investment plan, just all over again, and it was just all over the place. So after he had a couple of stressful weeks, it was all gone. After a birthday, it was all gone. After a celebration, it was gone. It was just this constant cycle that he couldn't stay consistent in what he was planning to do. He had the motivation, but there was also just random spurts of energy and there weren't any systems. So Marcus kept thinking the problem was him, that I'm lazy, I need to try harder. But that wasn't the truth. He built his entire financial life on emotion, just not structure. And emotion drains, but structure really does carry you. And so let's talk about the other person in this story, Elena. So I call her the quietly wealthy investor. So if you saw her on the street, if you walked past her, you would not even have any idea that she had this consistent wealth backing her. She didn't show it off. There was nothing. She wasn't bragging. She didn't obsess over anything publicly. She wasn't obsessing over the markets either. She was just so calm, cool, collected, softly spoken, methodical, and she was just a completely different type of person to Marcus. So when we reviewed her financial path across the last 5 years, something became very clear with Elena. She had very quietly, built a 6-figure investment portfolio, with no huge windfalls, and there was nothing extremely frugality about her. There was no lucky break, you would say. But what was her secret? What was the difference between Marcus and Elena? It was just that Elena had the systems. She had the systems that didn't rely on how she felt, on her emotion. So every Sunday for half an hour, she checked a couple of things. She checked what came in, what came out, and whether she stayed aligned with those goals that she set. She wasn't guessing where her money was going. If someone asked her, she could give you a vague estimate, but it was still a good ballpark. She still knew what was happening, and she had a solid plan. So that's exactly what the difference was between Marcus and Elena. So she wasn't waiting for the motivation. She had everything automated. She didn't have to think about it constantly, and she wasn't beating herself up about it either. Her savings accounts were all automated, and all of her investments were automated as well. So, and all of her categories were predetermined. Her spending had an amount of awareness attached to it, and she said a sentence that I thought kind of changed the way that I thought about money. She was like, I don't rely on my mood to build my wealth, because she understood what Marcus didn't. It was just discipline. Discipline isn't a personality trait either. It's just a system. And Elena wasn't any more smarter or talented or intelligent than Marcus either. She was also not as motivated. They both had a very similar mindset, but all she was structured. So both of these lives were incredibly different. Both of the outcomes were incredibly different. So they had very similar lifestyles, very similar incomes, they had all the same amount of money, but Elena quietly just was very consistent, and that was the difference. Marcus was in this chaotic cycle of feeling so motivated, and then having all this intense feelings and emotions, and then that created burnout in him, and then he felt bad about it. He was very guilty, and then he just went back into wanting to restart, and then it just kept going. But Elena lived in a very aware cycle where she was able to review everything, she was able to adjust, and then everything was automated, and then it was growing. So it was just to just set this system up, and she didn't even have to think about it. Marcus was quite emotional, but Elena was data driven. One was reactive, one was strategic. One got quite overwhelmed, and one got wealthier. And the interesting part about all of it, both of them believed that they were doing their best, but one built a system that didn't collapse the moment that life got a little bit stressful. So, because it will, life just happens like that. You never know what's going to happen. It'll get really busy, and you will probably break your routines, and then you'll need a system that you can rely on. So these things can happen. And that's why all of these topics matter. When I bring you the 3 topics today, they're not just like theories, they're reflections of what I've watched unfold in real life. Like, all these people are real. So the quiet advantage of the data-driven investor, so that was kind of Elena's entire journey. That was like, her story was built off that. And, okay, let me write that down. The quiet advantage of data-driven investing. Number 2. So the second point of today's video is from being confused to just being confident. So you want to build a system that grows while you sleep, either way. So this is how Elena built the wealth without feeling stressed or pressured or like overwhelmed. Confused. Confused to confident. And then the last point is the discipline trap. Why you can't rely on motivation alone to make you rich. The discipline trap. Okay. So, the discipline trap was what Marcus was stuck in. Like, it was just so completely separated from him and Elena. So this is exactly what separates the working class from the wealthy. And it's not intelligence. It's not any different amounts of motivation or like luck or even just the opportunities. It's the systems, because the wealthy build them and the working class were just never taught them. I know I was never taught them. So this story shows exactly why the upcoming lessons in this video are life-changing, because they show you how to move from being Marcus to being Elena, but without changing your personality or the energy level or even your lifestyle. It's just by changing the mechanics. So, topic number 1. The quiet advantage of data-driven investors. So, when people think of successful investors, they imagine like CEOs of companies, and they're just so confident, they just keep working so many hours over time. They hardly see their family if they've got family, you know, like bold, and just someone that's always on the ball, someone that always knows what to buy, how to buy it, when to sell it, and where the next opportunity will be. But literally in reality, the most consistent, successful investors are rarely the loudest or the flashiest. They are the quiet ones, the ones who track, the ones who measure, the ones who review, and the ones that just don't chase the hype. They are the ones that build the systems instead of relying on a gut feeling. So over this past year, I have seen the truth come to light, and it's become so much clearer. There is a quiet advantage of being an investor that relies on the data, and ordinary people can use it to outperform emotional investors, even with smaller incomes. So today, we're going to be breaking down the advantages, why they matter, and how the working class have been conditioned to invest emotionally while the wealthy are trained to invest strategically. So, what does it actually mean? A lot of people think data, and they think like a nerd or a coding person, or like someone that's on the computer 24/7, like, you know, crunching the numbers. But no, it's not. They also might think it's just someone that's always like, you imagine them like in the stock room, like at the stock market, and they're like calling everyone. They've got 5 phones and they're reading all these different charts, and like they're there in the action. But it's not always that complicated. So data-driven investing means just making the decisions based on the facts that are right in front of you. It just means asking questions like, what does this asset performance look like over time? How volatile is it? How much of my portfolio does this represent? What's the trend? What's the risk compared to the return? Does this align with my long-term goal? This is what wealthy investors do instinctively, because it's taught privately and passed down like generationally. But for everyone else, we were taught the opposite. We were taught to invest only when we feel ready, whatever that means. Buy what everyone else is buying. Panic when the market falls. Rely on motivation instead of structure. Or assume that we just need to try harder. These emotional approaches create chaos, and chaos destroys wealth. So, why emotional investors lose money, even if they make really good incomes? Emotional investors don't lose money because they're irresponsible. They lose because they have decisions that come from like excitement or fear or FOMO or panic, boredom, stress, frustration, social pressure, all of it. Emotional driven investors have patterns that repeat over and over again. They chase hype at the top. The feeling of, I don't want to miss out, is one of the most expensive emotions in finance. They sell at the bottom. Fear drives panic. Panic leads to loss. Losses lead to hesitation. Hesitation leads to missing the recovery. They invest inconsistently. When they feel motivated, they invest a lot. When life gets stressful, they stop. Their wealth never compounds. They trust their mood instead of their plan. The market dips and they lose confidence. The market rises and they gain confidence, but confidence shouldn't depend on the market, should depend on the data. They don't track where their money goes. If you don't measure, you can't improve. If you don't know what to improve on, you can't improve. If you don't analyze everything, you can't adjust everything. You can't grow if you're not reviewing. And this is how emotional investors end up working harder but not getting wealthier, So, the wealthy do the opposite. Quietly, the wealthy aren't necessarily smarter. They're just trained differently. Every wealthy family or a private investor or a high-level mentor teaches the same core principles. Data first, emotion second. Let me write that down. They look at numbers before feelings, patterns before panicking, trends before headlines, systems before discipline. Systems over discipline. They also don't rely on the willpower to just manage their money. They build everything automatically. So everything's automated. All the rules, the habits that remove emotion from the equation. And reviewing before reacting. That's a good one. Reviewing before reacting. They don't make any sudden decisions when markets move. They review their strategy, verify the data, and act intentionally. Long-term thinking over short-term noise. This is also a good one. Oops. Long term over short term. So the wealthy always zoom out of the bigger picture. Where will this be in 5 years? Matters more than what happened this week? What's going on? Being proactive instead of reactive. Proactive over reactive. They adjust based on information and not impulse. This is why wealthy investors can stay calm in situations where ordinary people panic. They're not emotionally stronger, they're just simply structured, supported by the systems. Why data creates confidence? Why does it do this? Confidence doesn't come from money. It comes from clarity. And nothing provides any more clarity than the data. When you track your portfolio, when you monitor your performance, when you know your categories, when you understand your risk levels, your confidence becomes grounded. Data eliminates fear because you know what you own. You understand what you're building. You know whether you're on track or not. You can measure everything progressively and objectively. You see the long-term trajectory as well. The wealthy aren't confident because they're special. They're confident because they can see the truth instead of guessing. And when you stop guessing, you stop panicking. Number 5, the quiet advantage in real life. Compounding consistently. When you remove emotion, your decisions become steady. Steady decisions become systems. Systems create consistency. Consistency compounds. And compounding creates wealth very quietly. That's why the advantage is quiet, not flashy or dramatic, and it's not viral, it's not exciting, but it is powerful. So over time, the person who invests consistently, tracks the numbers, reviews monthly, follows their plan, adjusts based on the data, removes emotional decisions, will always outperform the person who guesses, reacts, panics, chases all the hype, invest only when they feel ready. And also the person who abandons their plans during stress. Wealth is not built in big moments. It's built in tiny, unexciting, repeated decisions. And those decisions become effortless once they're supported by all the systems. Anyone can become a data-driven investor. Even working class people, including myself. Including most people that think that they need more income, more education, more confidence, more knowledge, more motivation. But what they actually need is structure, measurement, review, clarity, rules, and awareness. Data-driven investing requires none of the things that people assume. It doesn't require a finance degree either. It doesn't require an advance in math. It doesn't require expensive tools. It requires just consistency. And consistency comes from structure, not personality. This is what I teach every week at White Samurai. Because once you shift from emotional decisions to data-driven strategy, your entire relationship with money changes. You stop fearing the market, you stop guessing and gambling and second guessing. You start building, compounding, growing, and winning quietly. So that brings us to topic number 2. From confused to confident, how building a system that grows while you sleep. Most people think that wealth comes from working harder, but the truth is, the true wealthy people they already know. Wealth comes from building systems that work even when you're not looking. Systems don't get tired, systems don't panic, systems don't lose motivation, and systems don't spend impulsively or skip months or forget the goals. Systems don't wake up one day and say, not feeling it today. But people do. And that is the exact difference between someone who struggles financially for years and someone who quietly builds wealth in the freedom and background of their own life. Wealthy think in terms of machines, not moments. Systems, not spur of the moment decisions. The data, not the vibes. Long-term outcomes, not short-term feelings. And that's what's wild, is that the systems themselves aren't complicated. They only seem complicated because nobody teaches any of this stuff. School taught us how to memorize data and taught us how to memorize and pass exams, how to create a personal system that turns income into assets and assets into freedom. So today, that's what I'm going to break down. How do we do it? Step 1, build a money map so you always know where every dollar goes. And the honest truth, you can't build a system without having clarity. Confusion is one of the most expensive things in the world, unfortunately. If you don't know where your money goes, your financial system is already broken before it even exists. The wealthy build clarity first. They create what I call a money map. So they see what comes in, what goes out, what gets invested, what saves, what unnecessary leaks need to be sealed, what assets need to be fed, and it's not emotional. It's not dramatic. It's not about guilt or shame. It's just like simply the data. Once you see your money clearly, something crazy happens. Your decisions just become so much easier. Not because you're suddenly like more disciplined, but because the math makes the choice for you. You no longer like feel bad about anything. You just simply see what the trade-off is. You realize that spending like $200 today costs you $600 to $1,000 in long-term growth. So clarity becomes your first silent superpower. Step number 2, turn your money map into a simple, predictable system. This is where the wealthy pull ahead. They don't make financial decisions every month. They just make them every once in a while. And then they automate everything else. A wealthy person doesn't hope that they invest this month. They don't try to remember, or they don't wait until the end of the month to see what's left. They build a system that moves the money automatically, so everything becomes automated. Automated investments, automated savings, automated debits as well, automated asset contributions, and automatic risk protections. They automate everything. Most of the people struggle to stay consistent with, and this is where people underestimate systems. They think automation is only for like the uber rich, but it's not. Why does it need to be? Ordinary people are using small, steady amounts who gain the most momentum. The system is what grows your money while you live your life, while you work, while you sleep, while you're busy, while you're on holiday, while you're not busy, while you're dealing with everything that life throws at you. And especially while you're unmotivated, your system quietly moves you forward. So, step number 3, remove emotion and replace it with signals for people who struggle financially that rely on emotion to guide their decision. Should I invest today? Should I sell because the market's dipping? Should I wait until I feel more stable? These questions create emotional chaos because there's no structure holding them. Meanwhile, the wealthy use all of the signals, the rules built from the data, but not their emotion. So some examples are, I invest every month regardless of what the market is doing. I only adjust my portfolio every 3 to 6 months, not emotionally. I diversify accordingly to risk data and not fear. If market dips, I continue buying because the data shows long-term recovery. A system removes the noise. You stop making decisions from fear. You stop guessing. You stop reacting to all the headlines, all the things that are hype at the moment. You follow the signals, your own internal system that guides your behavior. So, protect your system with boundaries, and automation buffers. So even the best system collapses if life keeps interrupting it. That's because the wealthy build these buffers. There are emergency funds, separate bank accounts, 3-month investment reserves, clear spendings, limits on exposure, long risk distribution, insurance and protections, everything, diversified income flows. A buffer is not about being paranoid, it's about stabilizing your system. so life doesn't break it. Most people fall financially because they're irresponsible. Not because they're irresponsible, but because one unexpected event can shatter everything. And a wealthy person's system survives chaos. And that's what gives them the quiet confidence people often mistake for luck. You want to feed their system consistently until momentum takes over. So, here's the truth. In the beginning, your system relies on you. It does. You're feeding it. You're funding it. You're tending to it. But eventually, if you stay consistent, if you just get past these couple of months and you build the consistency, you won't even have to think about it anymore. And everything becomes self-sustaining. Your investments start paying you. Your money starts working for you. All your dividends go back in, everything's compounding, and you don't even have to think about it. Your portfolio even just grows faster, more than you can save. Your money works more hours than you do. So this is the point where people say, oh, you're so lucky. Oh, you must have had all the help. You must have had all these opportunities. Must be nice. But they could do it too. It's just compounding momentum, amplified by the system that removes emotional sabotage. The beginning feels very slow, but the later stages are inevitable, and that is the powerful machine. Once it's running, you don't need to do anything. It runs without you. So you also want to review and adjust the system, not the motivation. Most people try to restart their motivation every January, every New Year's. They're like, oh, I'm going to start investing. I'm going to start working out my money finally. But the wealthy review their system, not their mood. Every couple of months, every 3, every 6, every 12 months, they adjust their allocations, their diversification, their risk levels, their automation percentages, their financial goals, their investment vehicles, and this is how you become a calm investor. Not because you never worry, but because you trust your system more than you trust your emotions. And this is how you go from confused to confident. Not by reading emotional quotes, but by building a strategy that functions whether you're motivated or not. So, if you learn anything from this topic today, it'll just be this. Motivation is unreliable. Systems are unstoppable. Emotion is inconsistent. Data is predictable. Income is temporary. Strategy is permanent. And the moment you start building a wealth system, even if it's small or simple, beginner friendly, you have already separated yourself from 90% of people who just rely on hope or the guesswork. This is the quiet advantage wealthy people have. So, the discipline trap. Why motivation won't make you rich. So if there's one belief that destroys more financial futures than anything else, it's I'll start when I feel motivated. But motivation is treated as something that's magical. You just have to wait for it. It's something that you're chasing. Something that's supposed to just carry you through. But true wealthy people learn early on, whether it's through experience or being mentored. Motivation is high, discipline is a system, and systems are what make people rich. The wealthy aren't relying on feeling inspired, or they're not relying on mood or the vibes or when they feel ready. They aren't depending on a New Year's energy or a new wave of excitement over watching a motivational video. They just rely on the discipline. And more importantly, they build environments and systems that make discipline almost automatic. So this is the part where most people misunderstand. This is why they stay stuck. People think wealthy are more disciplined or more motivated, but the truth is simpler. The wealthy build fewer opportunities to self-sabotage. They design a life where the path of least resistance leads towards wealth anyway. No matter what happens, they're building wealth either way, So let's break it down. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structure. Motivation shows up when you're feeling inspired, when you hear a great quote online, you watch a cute little motivational video, your paycheck comes in finally, you see someone else just succeeding, doing everything right. You're fed up with your current situation, but motivation also disappears when you're very tired, or you're stressed, or life gets busy, or you're overwhelmed. Things don't go away if the market dips, the excitement wears off, you're simply just not in the mood. If your entire financial future depends on how you feel on just a random day, you can't predict the outcome. So inconsistent. But the wealthy fix this by removing emotion from the process entirely. They build automated transfers, automated investments, everything, savings, bills, debt reduction. So the question is no longer, do I feel like investing this month? It becomes, the system is already invested for me. The discipline is without needing willpower. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your system. You can have big goals. I want to retire early. I want to build wealth. I want to break my family's financial patterns, generational wealth. I want to invest consistently, but goals don't change your life. The systems do. A goal is direction. A system is a mechanism. Wealthy people don't spend time fantasizing. What's happened? The wealthy don't spend time fantasizing about the finish line. They spend time designing the track. If the track is smooth and consistent and automated, you win. If the track requires constant willpower and reminders and emotional engagement, you're falling off. This is why wealthy people seem calm. They aren't disciplined by nature, they're disciplined by design. So, discipline is not about being strong, it's just about being prepared. Most people think discipline means tough it out. Wealthy people think that discipline means fewer emotional decisions, fewer financial emergencies, fewer opportunities to fail, fewer temptations, fewer unknowns, fewer surprises. They build the buffers, so either way, they're building wealth. Emergency funds, diversified portfolios, realistic budgets, cash reserves, structured investment timelines. These buffers prevent any panic, and when panic is removed, emotional reactions disappear. Yay! And when emotional reactions disappear, consistency remains. That consistency is discipline. The wealthy use data to stay disciplined, not motivation. I don't know how many times I can repeat this. When most people lose motivation, their financial habits break. They skip investing 1 month, then it goes to the next one. Oh, I'll restart the next week after. I'll restart the next week after that. I'll restart the next week. It keeps going. They overspend and then they stop tracking and then they get overwhelmed and then they avoid looking at their money. But wealthy people don't rely on motivation. They rely on data to guide their decisions. Data stabilizes your mindset because it tells you what's happening, what's working, what needs adjusting, what you can automate, what you can ignore, what's just noise in the back. Discipline becomes easier when your decisions are not based on numbers, not feelings. Numbers don't get scared. Numbers don't panic when the market dips. Numbers don't get impatient. Numbers don't compare themselves to others. Numbers simply tell the truth. Discipline is boring, and that's the whole point, because most people fail. Most people fail because they want wealth to be so exciting and fun, and for it to have variety and sudden breakthroughs and emotional highs and quick wins, and for it to be dramatic. Wealth is created in the boring parts. Consistent contributions, quiet tracking, steady investing, rebalancing a couple of times a year, making calm decisions, avoiding financial drama. Nobody posts content about any of the boring stuff. But the boring parts are where discipline lives. And where discipline is where wealth is born. You don't need more motivation. You just need fewer decisions. This is one of the wealthiest truths that I've ever learned watching the clients at White Samurai. People who succeed financially make fewer financial decisions, not anymore. They remove all the unnecessary parts. How much should I invest becomes, it's already set. Don't even think about it. Should I invest this month? Becomes, it happens automatically. Should I buy this? It's not on the plan. The fewer decisions you have to make, the better your outcomes, because every decision is an opportunity for emotion to interfere. This is the real discipline hack. And your environment predicts your discipline. So discipline isn't personality, it's not genetics, it's not some inner fire only certain people have. It's your environment reinforcing your goals instead of sabotaging them. Your environment is chaotic, disorganized, unstructured, and emotional. Your finances will literally mirror that. If your environment is like automated and predictable and supportive and you review it, your finances will mirror that. So, the truth, motivation gets you started, but discipline finishes the race. So, you don't need more motivation to become wealthy. You just need system, structure, automation, clarity, predictable behavior, and a strategy you stick to even when you don't feel like it. That's discipline. It's not motivation that builds generational change. It is discipline. So, when you strip back all of the noise, wealth comes down to three things: data, systems, and discipline. Data gives you clarity, systems remove emotion, and discipline turns small, consistent actions into life-changing results. Most people never reach financial stability, not because they aren't capable, but because they're just relying on motivation instead of structure, emotion instead of information, and a chance instead of intention. When you choose data over drama, the systems over guesswork, you shift from surviving to truly building. That's the quiet advantage. And now you can see it as well. So if you're ready to move from confusion to confident and you want guidance designing a financial system that actually works, please visit the White Samurai Investment Group website. I'll leave it in the description below. So their team help new and growing investors understand the markets and building strategy and creating structure without overwhelm, without jargon, without guessing. And I just want to thank you everyone for watching. If you got this far in this video, don't forget to like or leave a comment or even subscribe if you're interested. So I will be providing more real-world financial education. And if you want deeper support, head to the White Samurai channel on YouTube as well. Or just head to their website, check things out, and send them an inquiry. And myself or the team will do our best to help you. So, thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.